It was expected and it happened. Finance Minister P Chidambaram invoked Wipro chief Azim Premji's name as he slapped a higher surcharge on the super rich in the budget that was presented yesterday. The editorials are calling him Robin Hood. Others say it was an inconvenient necessity to shore up revenues and bridge the fiscal shortfall. On We Mean Business tonight, we debate whether taxing the rich to fix the fisc was the right thing to do and whether those who are already compliant are being penalized further, while evaders, of course, are being let scot-free. Joining me with their views on this is Mr. B.M. Singh, former chairman of the CBDT, and Mr. TCA Srinivas Raghavan of the Hindu Businessline from New Delhi. Also joining me here in our Mumbai studios is Mr. Pranav Satya, a tax partner at Ernst Young. Before we begin our debate, though, the big headline of the day. A day after the market sold off violently, the Finance Ministry today has clarified on the tax residency certificate issue, saying it's sufficient enough to claim benefits under the double taxation avoidance agreements with various countries, including Mauritius. My colleague Sapna Das had a chance to speak to Parthasarathy Shom, the head of the GAR panel, earlier today. Here's what he had to say.
The release of this clarification that the government is trying to put out, and does it really, set the house in order? Because a lot of quarters right now are still not very sure of what the government is trying to say.
In this press release that the finance minister has put out today, everything should be as clear as crystal. I mean, I have myself gone through the earlier matter, and we worked on the press release, and Finance Minister himself has deliberated very, very deeply over it, and I will just explain to the extent of my ability what it means. What it means is that 789, I mean, with respect to Mauritius, is very clear that the tax resident certificate, the TRC, is sufficient for both residency as well as the beneficial ownership. So for Mauritius, because at the moment, you can see here it says, pending ongoing discussions between India and Mauritius, it is in force. And what is the meaning? No one is taking out 789. So since it is in force, what is covered in 789 is still relevant, and both are covered. Both matters are covered. In other instances, what this circular, or rather this press release is clarifying, is that the residence requirement as specified in the treaties, for example, tax resident certificate or any other proof, that will be sufficient to prove residence. For example, if someone from the US, someone comes and says, my residence is in the US, a tax officer wouldn't know whether the person is, the juridical person is coming from the US or not. So that particular tax officer will want a certification, what is allowed in the Act and what is therefore also reflected in the treaty or whatever. That will be sufficient to prove the tax residence of the person on the basis of such a certification. That's the first one. But in those non-Mauritius instances, the TRC is not sufficient for beneficial ownership. For that, the AO can ask, okay, where does your beneficial ownership lie? Because the TRC has proved you're resident in the US in our example, but we want to know who your beneficial ownership owners are. If the beneficial owners are elsewhere, then you cannot ask for treaty benefits with respect to the US.
Right.
But with respect to Mauritius, because the 789 clearly says that the TRC covers both, it will cover both.